Alberto Gonzalez, John Heilemann, Mike Barnicle, and Thomas Roberts back at the table, along with Katty Kay in Washington. Well, sir, first of all, what's your reaction to the NSA court ruling?
I was surprised. Quite honestly, I was surprised. I think the decision by Judge Leon is, quite frankly, is contrary to precedent, and it's the kind of decision that I might expect from an appellate court, particularly the Supreme Court. But to say that conditions have changed, I mean, as a district court judge, I think your obligation is to follow precedent. And I think the precedent is fairly clear. I'm not suggesting that in the end he won't be vindicated by a decision by the Supreme Court if he decides to take the case. But that's a decision, the kind of decision it seems to me that the Supreme Court should be making, not a district court judge whose primary responsibility is to follow precedent in applying the law.
Mike Barnicle.
General, what precedent or precedents would those be that he should follow? The 1979 Supreme Court ruling?
Yes, the fact that these kinds of records, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy in these kinds of records, and so there's no Fourth Amendment constitutional issue. Now, if Congress believes there should be a statutory right of privacy, then obviously they could pass a statute, and then we get into a fight as to whether or not the commander-in-chief authority under the Constitution might trump that statutory prohibition by the Congress. But yes, if you look at the court cases, it seems to me this decision by Judge Leon is contrary to those court decisions, and we'll have to wait and see what an appellate court does.
John Heilemann.
Mr. Attorney General, you've said that you think that it's important for, in terms of the continued viability of this program, for the American people to see it as a limited program. What the judge ruled in this case, or what he said in his ruling, was that he couldn't imagine a more indiscriminate or arbitrary invasion than the systematic and high-tech collection of retention of personal data on virtually every single U.S. citizen. How do you feel about that particular part of his opinion and his ruling yesterday? Do you think that's a fair assessment of what he said about the program as it currently exists?
I don't think it is a fair assessment, quite frankly. This is not a situation where you have the executive branch conducting this kind of collection without any kind of supervision or oversight. Now, I do agree that we need to be careful about abuses, and I do support the role of Congress. I think we need to have strict oversight by the Congress. I think we need to have more reporting to the Congress by the NSA in terms of how these authorities are being used. I think we need to have the General Counsel, the Inspector General at NSA involved in looking to ensure that abuses are minimized. And if it appears that the agency is incapable of exercising these authorities without abuse, then I think it is legitimate to look to see whether or not a continued use of these programs makes sense. Because it's important to protect the privacy interests of Americans, the constitutional rights of American citizens. I think we can do both. I think we can have this very important program and still protect the constitutional interests of the American people.
Well, that's actually the question. How is it possible to do both? How?
Well, again, as I indicated, some of the things that can be done and should continue to be done, which is, of course, have continued oversight by Congress. The other thing we need to keep in mind is we have all three branches of government that are involved in this process. We have the executive branch, the lawyers, the Department of Justice have signed off on this. We have the Congress. We have leaders of the Senate and House Intel committees who have said publicly that, in fact, these are very important programs and we need to continue these programs. And we have judges on the FISA court. We have to remember that these judges on the FISA court are federal judges, just like Judge Leon. They take the same oath to protect the Constitution, just like Judge Leon. They've looked at this program and they've given authorization for the NSA to engage in these kind of activities, subject to, of course, the oversight, the restrictions imposed by Congress.
Sir, this is Thomas Roberts. It seems as if the American public has never been more engaged because of Edward Snowden at this point, of what the NSA is doing and what it means to all of our liberties here in this country. So when you talk about congressional oversight and the conversations that need to be had between Congress and the NSA, or organizations that are trying to collect this metadata, at what point do we need to draw the line? Because just because the NSA can do this type of operation and pull all of our emails or know all of our telephone calls, how they're placed, should they be able to do it? And are we operating now in a system of government where it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission?
Well, as to whether or not this is good policy, that's a debate that occurs within Congress every day. And this is the opportunity for the American people to speak out, to contact the members of Congress and express their views. And Congress will decide what is the best policy in the laws that they pass. As we currently stand today, it appears to me that Congress has made the decision that, in fact, the best policy is that we continue these programs because they're vitally important in protecting our country. Now, having said that, it's important that these programs operate in a way that are subject to oversight by the Congress, and we need to, again, work as hard as we can to ensure that we can continue these programs because they're very important, but to do so in a way that can be reassuring to the American people that their rights are being protected.
Katty Kay?
Mr. Gonzalez, it's interesting there that you stress that these programs are very important. Of course, one of the things that Judge Leon said in his ruling yesterday was the government does not cite a single case in which analysis of the NSA's bulk metadata collection actually stopped an imminent terrorist attack. I mean, in this balance of privacy versus security, should we be setting benchmarks for success, and should the public have some indication of what those benchmarks are?
I was surprised by that part of the ruling as well. I don't know whether or not the government failed tremendously in presenting its case, but you know, you hear Senator Feinstein, for example, come out and talk publicly about how important these programs are in protecting our country. I think it is legitimate to ask whether or not these programs are effective, because if in fact they're not being used to protect our country, why are we engaged in this kind of activity? So I think it's a very important question. That is a troubling aspect of the opinion written by Judge Leon. I don't know whether or not I can agree with that. Obviously, I don't have access to the most current classified information, but that is a legitimate question to ask.
All right, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, thank you so much.